Okay, yes, we're live. Yay! Okay. Oh wow, it's release day. I can't believe it. Yes, so here I am rocking my fox ears. I had to wear them today, and I've also got northern lights around my eyes. I decided to do this basically because I just wanted to celebrate. I just decided to jazz up my eyes a little bit today, and I've got some snowflakes as well. And it's funny, because when I was going to do my eyes like this, I actually looked to get some inspiration. And something that really struck me when I was looking at various Northern Lights makeups is there's so much pink in there. You really see a lot of pink. This is speaking as someone who's actually seen the lights quite a few times. You don't usually see pink, so mine's more blue and green. But anyway, I'm rambling. Hi everyone. Give me a little wave if you can see me. I'm so excited. It's release day. I can't believe it. And by extension, that means that the entire trilogy is now out in the world. That's just I can't believe that I've managed to do it all in 12 months. I mean, I kind of I knew that I could do it, but the fact that I have actually done it, it's crazy. So anyway, I'm going to be live on YouTube for a little bit. If you have any questions for me about the Foxfires trilogy, about my writing, about anything at all, drop it down for me. I've already got a few saved on my phone, so I'm going to work through those. We may be joined by a cat. She's jumping about all over the place here, so she may come and say hello later. No guarantees, but we'll see. So yeah, let me just sort this out. This is the first time that I've been live on YouTube publicly, if you get me. I've done it a few times with my Patreon to do the fairy tale live streams, but that's always unlisted. So yeah, this is this is gonna be it's gonna be good. Okay, so the first question that I have comes from Jenny. This was emailed into me. Most of these have been emailed into me or left as comments. How long did it take you to write the Foxfires trilogy? It took a while. So the way that writing usually works for me is the actual writing part, so the actual sitting down at the computer and typing everything out, is reasonably short. It usually only takes me a month or so per book to write each draft. But the reason why I can write that fast is because I prepare. And I started preparing for the Foxfires trilogy pretty much as soon as I got back from my first winter in Lapland. And that was in the end of December 2015, I think. Yeah, 2015. That was my first winter in Lapland. And while I was out there, I already had the initial idea for the story. It wasn't quite ready yet. So I came home, I did a lot of research, and I was just working on that as best I could. And then when I actually came to write the thing, I actually wrote the first drafts of all three books within 12 months, sort of how I've released them all in 12 months. Um, and they were all written in 2017, pretty much back to back. And then I went back a few times, rewrote them, edit, rewrite, just trying to get them as polished as I could and get them to the best they could. The first draft was pretty similar in many respects to the final product, but there were a few things that needed tweaking and some things that just weren't working, so they needed to go back and have some extra attention. But it in a way, it depends on how the question is phrased. The actual writing part didn't take me very long, but the writing part with everything else on top took a while. But it was worth it because I think it's turned out a better product at the end. So yes, and then I have another one from Scott. Did any names change during the writing process? Yes, they did. So not this can happen sometimes when you're writing. You think you have a perfect name, and it doesn't work in the end. You use it sort of just to have a name so you know who that character is, and then as you spend more time with the character you realize, actually, yeah, the name should be more this or whatever. And I'm usually a sucker for names. I like to really do my research when it comes to names, make sure that if I'm setting something that's set in a particular time period or based on a particular culture or within a particular culture, etc., that I get it as accurate as I can, really, and even within that, maybe to see if I can fit the name around what this character represents. And a good example where this happened in the Foxfires trilogy was actually Lilia. Lilia wasn't actually called Lilia in the first draft; she was called Gerda, and it was that she was Gerda for a little bit. And the reason why I called her that was because I wanted it to be a homage to the heroine of the Snow Queen, Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale, because that was such a big influence on me and it's my favourite fairy tale. But as I went on, I realised that even though Lilia is certainly very plucky like Gerda and very brave, she also has a darkness to her and really a weight, heavier in a way than Gerda had. And there was that darkness and that sadness really, you know, overshadowed everything that she did. And I thought I really wanted to have a name that reflected that. So I did a little bit of digging and I eventually found the name Lilia, which is the Finnish and Icelandic variant of lily. And it's funny, really, because lilies don't naturally grow in Arctic environments, but I chose that one because basically just because the flower itself, in like the language of flowers from like Victorian times and stuff, lilies symbolize sadness and deep mourning, but also love at the same time. And I thought, yeah, that's it. A couple of other names changed as well. And a couple of also Sigurd as well. Sigurd, he was originally called Onni, which is a Finnish name. There are a lot more Finnish names, but I decided to make it a bit more inclusive of just all the Nordic countries in a way, just so it wasn't specifically like a certain place. The Northlands aren't meant to be a particular place in our world, but I wanted to have some influence from all the Nordic countries and various different places. So that's why there's a real mix of names in there. And also a couple of other things that changed in the writing process were originally Thomas and Paavo weren't brothers; they were actually cousins. But I changed that quite late, actually, in the writing process. And we also had the first time that Thomas met Lumi was after he accidentally fell through an ice fishing hole and she rescued him. So that sort of came back into play, the idea of him falling into a frozen body of water and her coming down and rescuing him. That came back in the story, but in a slightly different way. So yeah, okay, so on to the next one. This is from Tom. I read that you got real frostbite. What was that like? Painful. It was painful. Okay, so basically, I knew from the beginning, writing this series, that two characters, Thomas and Mika, would unfortunately suffer frostbite. And as with everything, I did a lot of my research to make sure that I got everything right. And I also called on my own experiences of being very cold, living up in the Arctic. And I wrote the passages. I was really happy with them. And then I went back to Lapland and I got frostbite. And basically, it was just just thinking about it makes me wince. I was very lucky that I didn't get severe frostbite. It was very mild. There was no damage, definitely no lasting damage. But basically what happened was I was out in about minus, I want to say about minus 21 degrees Celsius. It was extremely cold. There were no clouds to hold in the heat. It was bitterly cold in the night. And I ended up standing in snow, which was pretty much up to my hips. And through various things, basically I didn't have enough socks on, and it wasn't really anything that could have been helped. I just had to run outside quickly, and I ended up being outside for longer than I thought I was going to be, and I ended up in this hip deep snowdrift. And because I didn't have enough socks on, slowly my feet began to get extremely cold, and I was out for about an hour in this horrible cold. And eventually, when I managed to get back to my cabin, I couldn't really think straight. I was just my brain was so full with the cold. And even though I've known colder temperatures in the Arctic, that was the coldest that I'd ever felt. If you get me, it's a bit of a different kind of cold when you're out there to when you're in a place like where I am now in England. I actually tend to feel the cold more here in England than I do up in the Arctic, because here it's damper. So the dampness gets into your bones, and because it's so wet here, you really feel it. But up in the Arctic, it's so cold that there can't be any moisture. It's too cold to be damp. So you feel the cold. You really feel the cold. But it's more of a surface cold. It's a very dry cold. And when you breathe in, you can feel it slicing down your throat. It's very, very different. So yeah, so basically I got back to my cabin, and my hands were like this. I don't know how well you can see that showing up on the video, but my hands were just shaking so much. And I just got in the shower and I put it on like the coldest of lukewarm temperatures, just to try and warm up my feet. And I dug my nail into my feet to basically check for frostbite, and I couldn't feel anything. My feet were blue, like they were actually blue, and I was like, oh dear, this isn't good. But the thing is, the worst part about having frostbite is not actually the frostbite itself. It's afterwards when you're starting to thaw out, and all the blood's sort of going back into the part of your body that were frozen, essentially. That was painful. And I must have stayed with the shower just pointed at my feet for about half an hour, just gradually increasing the temperature bit by bit by bit until I could feel everything again. And as I said, it was very mild frostbite. Everything was fine. There was no lasting damage. But having experienced real frostbite, I went back and rewrote those frostbite passages in the trilogy, because I'm like, okay, now I actually know what it feels like, as well as just watching stuff and reading stuff about what it's like to have frostbite. Now I know, and I do not recommend it. So if you do, word of advice, if you do ever find yourself in the Arctic or in a place which is really, really cold and there is a real risk of you getting frostbite, be careful. Be very, very, very careful. Make sure that you wear multiple layers of clothing. Make sure that you keep your extremities covered. And if you get wet in the cold, just try and get inside as best you can. The cold, the wetness and cold will do more harm than just regular cold, if you get me. But yes, do not recommend frostbite. Okay, and now we have one from Sam, which is, how do you prepare for writing a book? It's a bit more of a general one. So every single book experience for me is different, and I sort of treat every single book like a baby, really. They're like my children, and I watch them grow, and then I let them go, and it's a beautiful thing to see. But usually with the writing process, it tends to follow more or less the same kind of thing for each book. So I usually start off just with an idea or a couple of ideas that all sort of like come together, and then I basically interrogate the plot into existence. I constantly ask questions. Okay, well, if this is going to happen, what's it going to mean for this? How does this work? Why is it like this? I just basically interrogate myself until I have an answer that satisfies me. And even if I don't have an answer that's particularly satisfactory, I'm just like, okay, put a pin in it, and then we'll research that. We'll research. And then I sit down and do all of my research, all of my planning. If I can, if it's possible for me to actually experience the thing that I'm going to be writing about, I'll go out if I can and try and experience it myself. Leading on from the frostbite thing a little bit, I suppose. But yeah, like for example, when I was writing the Foxfires Trilogy, I knew that there was going to be some archery involved, and luckily I used to be an archer. I used to be in the archery society when I was at university, so I'm very familiar with what it's like to shoot a bow, how you have to hold the arrow, how you string a bow. I knew all that stuff. But even if I didn't, I probably would have gone out and shot for a couple of days just so I could get a feel for what I was talking about. And then once I've done all of my preliminary research, pretty much everything that I can think of which will inform me at that point, then I'll sit down with everything that I have, all of the research that I've done, and all of the ideas that I've done, and I'll try and put them into some kind of linear form. And usually for me, this takes the form of something which I call the walkthrough. And it's called various things. Some authors call this a synopsis, some authors call it an outline, but I've just always called it the walkthrough. And basically, it's a chapter by chapter breakdown of everything that's going to be in that story. And I write the walkthrough several times, just as I might rewrite the book several times, and each time I improve on it. And the walkthrough, I tend to think, is almost like the bare bones of the story, a bit like those anatomical models that you had in high school in biology. And the first thing that I tend to do is make the skeleton, which is the walkthrough. And then as the story goes on, I can add the muscles, I can add the fat, I can add all the tendons to really bring it together. And the final product, which you see, which is the shiny, the shiny thing where you can't really see the strings, or you shouldn't be able to see the strings. That's just the surface. It takes time to get to that point, but the more time I find that I spend on that foundation and building up all those bones bit by bit, the stronger the story ends up being. And I've often said in the past that I tend to think of myself as sort of a cross between a plotter and a pantser. You usually have writers are one or the other, or they can identify as one of the other. They either plot everything and plan everything to a T, or they fly by the seat of their pants. And I think I'm, in a way, sort of in the middle, because I plot quite a lot. I do a lot of research and I plan everything and basically have the entire story already written in my head in the beginning. That's like all of my pre-work, all of my planning, all of my preparation. I'm very much a plotter. But because I've prepared that much, when it comes to actually writing the actual story and having fun, it means I can let loose a little bit, because I never see my walkthrough as you must do this and this needs to happen here and blah blah blah. The only time that I will stick religiously to the walkthrough is if it's a very important scene and I know it needs to happen a certain way. Because if I've written it in the walkthrough, I've had that removal from the story, I've had that distance to be able to look at it objectively and know how best to tackle a scene like this. When you're actually writing the manuscript, you can get so caught up in the emotion that sometimes you can lose your grip on it and it can carry you away, which is great. But also at the same time, you also need to know when to be able to say, okay, now I need to take the wheel a little bit. So that's why I sort of think I'm sort of in the middle. If you plot in the beginning, you can pants when you're writing it. It's not a strict thing, my walkthrough. It's just a roadmap. Just because you've got a map doesn't mean you can't explore the sides of the road. Hope that answered the question. Okay, and now I have one from Emily. What's the coldest temperature you have ever experienced? Well, as I mentioned with the frostbite question, the coldest that I've ever felt when I got that frostbite, it was about minus 21 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but the coldest actually on the thermometer that I have ever experienced in the Arctic was minus 32. And yeah, that was so cold. It was bearable. I could bear it. Like I say, I was wrapped up very well when it went that low, and I didn't stay out for very long. You can't really stay out for very long when the weather's like that. But I remember just how cold it was, and I felt like my cheeks were going to fall off. Of all the things that you think that you're going to fall off, it was my cheeks. I could not feel my cheeks. I had feeling from like just under my eyes here and around my nose I could feel, and here, but all this I couldn't feel it. It was literally as if my cheeks had fallen off. And that was actually when it was that cold, I actually had some tears on my eyes, on my eyeballs, and I thought I need to blink these away. It's so cold. The water wasn't freezing on my eyeballs, but because I had just had moisture on my eyeballs and it was that cold, my eyeballs felt so cold and it was so uncomfortable. So I blinked the tears away, and the tears went onto my eyelashes, and they froze. They froze my eyelashes together, and it looked like I had two white feathers stuck on my face. And I thought to myself, "Oh, great! Now what am I gonna do?" Because I couldn't open my eyes. My eyelashes were just stuck together. And when your hair freezes, which it can at that temperature, I've had like just my normal hair freeze as well. It just goes absolutely white. When that happens, you can't really touch your hair because it goes so brittle, and it is literally just frozen. That if you touch it, it can break. It can actually snap. And I was like, "Oh, great! I'm going to snap my eyelashes here." So in the end, I ended up just very quickly because again it was so cold. There was a real risk of frostbite. I just took off my gloves, rubbed my hands together, and put them over my eyes like this, and just had to wait for the heat from my palms to thaw out my eyelashes. So that was an experience. um, and yes, when my hair froze, it'll just freeze even if you're walking. I remember I was walking around a lake near my cabin this one day when it was minus 32, and I'd gone maybe not even half a mile, and all of my hair here went completely white. But I think the craziest one for my hair freezing was actually this one evening. I just had a shower and washed my hair, and my hair was still damp. I don't tend to like using a hairdryer or anything on my hair. I like to let it dry naturally. And I just got out the shower, and my hair was still damp, and I was just getting ready to have a nice quiet evening in. And then all of a sudden, someone came running through. The Northern Lights are out. The Northern Lights are out. So, and I've seen the Northern Lights so many times, but every single time may as well be the first time. They're just every single time they blow me away. So I didn't care that I just got out the shower. My hair was still damp. I was going outside to watch the Northern Lights. So I grabbed my coat, I put my boots on, and grabbed a scarf and stuff, and ran outside into the driveway and looked up. And there's the lights just starting to come out, and I'm just standing there like, "Oh, it's amazing!" Jumping up and down like a maniac. And within a couple of minutes, I felt my hair, my scalp going tighter, shall we say. This very strange sensation, like all over my scalp. And I reached up and touched my hair, and it was as if my entire head had turned into straw. That was what it felt like. It like really, really cold straw. And I had my hair straight down, but I lifted a little bit of it just like up by my face like this. And at the time, my hair was longer; it reached down to my hips, and my hair just stuck straight out. It was like it was like slightly cooked spaghetti. The way it just sort of like bent like that and just didn't move. And I'm just like, okay, I need to be so careful now. I need to go back inside and thaw my hair out. It's not very often you can say that, is it? But yes, minus 32. Where I was in the Arctic, it can get a lot colder than that, but that's the coldest that I have ever experienced. And yeah, I mean, something else that I love about when it's really cold like that is it's something that I've actually described in the book. So many of these descriptions in the book, I just couldn't have done if I hadn't seen them myself and witnessed what it's like to be there. When you have a day like that, where it is just so cold and there's no clouds to hold in the heat, it is just absolutely freezing cold. Any moisture that is hanging about in the air, it freezes like in the air, and the air around you like glitters. It's so beautiful. It's especially beautiful if you have a torch or a flashlight for my American Batties, and you just sort of shine it around, and you can see the air shimmering and sparkling, and just it's beautiful. And you also get this sky, which this is not the technical term for it. This is just what I always called it, candy floss sky. And it's basically when it's so cold that the entire sky goes these beautiful pastel shades of baby blue, baby pink, a really, really crisp, soft lilac color. And it's so beautiful. And I have never seen skies like that except that high up and in the Arctic Circle. Never seen them in England. Just have grey here in England. Okay, and then we have one from Wendy. How many drums do you own? By the way, Batties, if you do have any questions for me, pop them in the chat box thing, and I will answer them. Yes, drums. So every single winter that I went to Lapland, I bought myself a drum to mark the year. and they gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger every year that I went out there. So I actually have, they're all up on the wall here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, I have 5 drums to mark the each year that I was in Lapland each winter. But I also have another drum, and I noticed this question before I started the stream, so I made sure to have this drum nearby, which is this one. And this one I got from the Arctic Circle shopping centre, and it's handmade by a local Sami drum maker, and it's made of birch wood, as you can see here, and this is reindeer skin and a little bit of reindeer fur here at the top, and hand painted as well. And if I turn it around, you can see the back beam there, and this is really light. My other ones are quite heavy, but this one is really, really light. And full disclosure, I don't have any qualms about owning a drum like this, or indeed anything with reindeer products on it, which I have gotten from Lapland, because I know where they've come from. The sale of things like this directly benefits the indigenous Sami people up there, and all the reindeer up there live a really good life. And I have so much respect for the Sami people. Anyone who reads the acknowledgements in the Night River will see that. But basically, every reindeer is owned by somebody, and whoever owns the mother also owns the calf. And when the reindeer are used to make clothing and drums and various things, not a single part of them is wasted, and it's actually quite a beautiful thing. So I have no qualms about owning anything like this, if I know where it comes from and I know that the animals have had a good life, because they have had a good life. And this one, in a way, it's hand painted, but this isn't a traditional pattern per se that you would normally see on a Sami drum. Usually in the middle here, you would have the sun symbol, which on most drums almost looks a little bit like a diamond with spokes coming off it. This one, though, was more of an artisan style, but I just fell in love with it. So yes, I had to have it. Yeah, so put that there. That's also a little bit smaller, I suppose, to the drums in the trilogy. I would say the drums in the trilogy, they're not huge drums, but they are certainly larger than this. But they're the same sort of style with this back beam here. I think you can see that from the book when you read it. Let's see now. Do we have any other questions? Okay. How many times have you seen the Northern Lights? Okay, so I've seen the Northern Lights quite a few times. Every year that I've been out to Finland, I have seen them at least once, usually a couple of times. And usually when people go to the Arctic, at least tourists, they don't tend to go for a very long period of time, maybe a week at most. But it's usually just a couple of days. And that's never enough, really, to guarantee seeing the lights. Because, I mean, they're a natural phenomenon. You can't really predict them. You have apps and stuff which can help you along a little bit, but they're never 100% accurate. That it's impossible. You can just do your best, and you might have perfect conditions for lights, and then a cloud will come in and you just, nope, it's not going to happen. But basically, whenever I was there, I saw the lights, and the reason why I was in a better chance of seeing them was because I was there for a longer period of time. I was always in Lapland for the minimum of a month, so there was always a higher chance for me than if I just gone out for a week or a couple of days. And I'll never forget the first time I saw them. But basically, I've seen, how many times have I seen it? It must be at least 10, 12 times, maybe. I want to say 12-ish over a period of 5 winters. But it's funny, actually, because the best time to see the Northern Lights, at least in parts of the Arctic where I was was not actually in the middle of winter, which was when I was always there. It's actually more in like the autumn and the spring. They tend to be more frequent then. They tend to be more vibrant, but it it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether they're really faint or really vibrant. I mean, obviously, if they're really vibrant, it's stunning, and I have seen them where they're really vibrant. But even just seeing them, just seeing them in any context is just incredible. And I remember the first time that I ever saw them, and I was actually standing in the middle of the village where I stayed, and there was quite a lot of light pollution. Not tons of light pollution. It's not like if you're in a city. Definitely not like if you're anywhere in the UK or mainland US or anything, for example. But out there in the village where I stayed, it was only a tiny little village in the middle of the forest, but even the lights that were there, just the odd street lamps, even that was enough to drown out quite a few of the stars and the lights. And the best way to see the lights is to get away from any light pollution. So the first time I saw them, it was amazing. Don't get me wrong, but it was very washed out because there were so many street lights about. The second time, we chased them to so Millie's just tried to jump up on the bed. Just missed. Yeah, the second time we chased them to this field in the middle of nowhere where there were no lights, and the aurora was right over our heads, and it was just stunning. um it's something that I will never forget. Just filled the sky, and they were green, and there was blue as well, and a little bit of purple at the edges. It's quite rare to see a red aurora, a completely red aurora. The most that I've ever seen is just a little bit of purple at the edges, but most of the ones that I've seen have been that very typical Northern Lights ethereal green with a little bit of blue. And the thing that really fascinates me about the lights whenever I watch them is the way that they move. Because usually when you see footage of the Northern Lights, it's sped up, so you can see the full extent of the display, which is fantastic. It really gives you an idea of how these things, move. But at the same time, it's inaccurate because they don't move that fast. I mean, they can move fast, but it kind of robs them of their power, I think, whenever footage is sped up, because they move it's very ghost like. The best way that I can describe it really is almost like if you imagine a really sheer material sort of floating in water, just like really, really softly, but at the same time flickering like a really slow burning fire. It kind of reminds me a little bit. When I was a kid, I had a wood burning stove in my house, like a proper old, like inglenook fireplace with a wood burning stove in it. And the stove that we had, you could close the air vent on it so the fire would burn hotter and for longer through the night. But whenever you did that, it almost made the flames move in slow motion almost, and it was very cinematic. I used to just watch the fire more than I watched the TV sometimes. And the way that the Northern Lights move is, in a way, sort of similar, but slower still. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's beautiful. And when you watch them, you start off with this one streak, and then another streak will grow from it, and then another streak will appear over here, and then they'll all sort of start going like this, and you can see why there's so much mythology around them. It does look like they're dancing. It looks like fire in the sky. I can really see, having seen them, why in Finland the Finnish word for them is ravuntalet, which means foxfires, and that's where the title of the trilogy comes from as well. This idea, in Finnish mythology, that the Northern Lights are made by a magical fox who sweeps the snow with its tail, and the snow shoots up into the sky and creates the aurora. And it's still the modern Finnish word for the Northern Lights, ravuntalet. But yes, I think that is all the questions that I was sent. Yes, that is all the questions that I was sent. So, do any of you guys who are watching have any questions for me about my writing, or about the Foxfires trilogy, or indeed anything at all? If you do, pop them in the chat box, and I will answer them before I go. Millie Moo has come and sat on my lap. As tilt the camera down so you can see her. Hello, girly. Hello, girly. Little cutie pie. But yeah, it feels really weird for me this year not being in Finland because normally this time of year I would be there. But obviously due to the way things are, nobody's going anywhere at the moment. But it's really nice to be here, be home for Christmas, which I haven't been for quite a few years. It's very, very nice. But it's also very strange to look out the window and not see any trees or any snow or and tell you something which is really, really weird. The sun rises so early here. Like usually this time of year where I am in Finland, it's polar night, and it's technically not absolute darkness all the time. You do have a little bit of sunlight around midday, but the sun doesn't completely break the horizon, so it's always a kind of really weird dusky twilight kind of thing. It's my favorite time of day when I'm out there. It's called the blue hour, and but it's not always blue. Sometimes when the sun comes up, the sky and the snow are a sort of periwinkle blue sometimes, or like a lilac. But when the sun comes up, you get this burst of gold, and it's just all the colours out there are so muted but so strong at the same time. If you understand what I mean, I've never seen colours like that here in England. Like here, it's a pretty nice sunny day here at the moment, and there's no snow, there's no frost. We haven't had any frost yet. I feel cheated. And there's no reindeer walking down the road. That's another thing with it being in Finland. All the reindeer just roam free in the wild, so you can just be walking down the road, and there's a reindeer there, and you can be stuck behind a reindeer for a little bit. And also a little bit of trivia for those of you, a little bit of Christmas trivia, I suppose, about the reindeer. Um, if reindeers have antlers at this time of year, they are girls. So Santa's sleigh is pulled by all girls. The reindeer are actually the only deer species where the females have antlers too. And in the winter, the females are the only ones that have the antlers, and the males shed theirs. Um, but and also another thing which I found out so much about reindeer when I was there, and also because when I was at uni I specialised in marine and polar sciences and animal behaviour and stuff. And reindeer have what is in essence a natural antifreeze, so that they can survive. And their fur is they have like a double layer of fur on their coat, and each hair is hollow, so it can trap even more heat. And when you touch reindeer fur, it's so soft, but it's so dense. Like you can't part it to get to the skin underneath. It's just it's not possible. Um, and their noses as well are packed with blood vessels, and that's basically to warm the air a little bit before it enters their lungs. Amazing animals, and their feet as well are amazing. They don't have hooves like most like how you would think a deer would have. Their feet are actually almost like they splay out a little bit, and they can swim. They're actually really good swimmers, and the reason their hooves are like that is so that they can dig through the snow to get to the food underneath. They eat things, a lot of things which can be buried under the snow, and they've got to dig through it. And yeah, so everything about them is just perfectly adapted to survive in such a freezing, freezing environment as that. Fascinating animals. I absolutely love them. But anyway, Batties, I think that's all the questions that there are. So if you guys don't have any more questions for me, I will sign off now. But please be come back later, because at 3 o'clock today, so that's 3 o'clock. I'm just looking at my clock over here. 3 p.m. GMT. That's English time. So in just over 3 hours from now, I'm going to be going live on Instagram to give you a reading from the Night River, and also talk about excuse me, talk about a couple of the inspirations which inspired it, the mythological inspirations, and various other things. So if you would like to join me on Instagram at 3 o'clock, that would be amazing. And also, don't forget, tonight at 8 o'clock GMT, we have the free virtual Facebook party. And there's links to that all over my social media. It starts at 8, it will go on until 11 o'clock. There's going to be some games, there's going to be some competitions. I've got a little surprise prize for you, a surprise prize, surprise prize for you as well. And you can be in with a chance of winning a signed paperback copy of The Night River, which will be the very first ever signed copy of that book that I will have ever put out. So please feel free to join me for the rest of the release day. If you haven't checked out The Night River yet, it is available now in ebook and paperback worldwide. All 3 of the books are now out for the first time altogether ever, which is just makes me so happy. And also, speaking of the reindeer and stuff, also seems like a pretty good time to reiterate that from this day forward, 10% of my royalties from the sale of every single book in the Foxfires Trilogy is going to be donated to Ask a Reindeer Foundation, and that's a charitable organisation based in Swedish Lapland, Swedish Sapmi, which is the word in the Sami languages for Lapland, Sami homeland. And that's going to directly help the indigenous Sami people of Swedish Sapmi to continue their livelihood and allow their culture to continue and be passed on to the younger generation. Just basically allow the traditional reindeer herding to continue for a community. So if that sounds amazing to you, then feel free to go and check out their website as well. Ask a Reindeer Foundation. Just pop it into Google and it'll be the first thing that pops up. And if you haven't discovered the trilogy yet, there's no better time. It's nice and Christmassy, it's nice and wintry, full of spirits and magic and fantasy and all that good stuff. So if you want a new winter read, check out the trilogy if you like the sound of it. All the links are on my website and all across my social media, and I will be online pretty much all day today on various social medias doing various things for the release day. So the Winter Spirits, the Mist Children, the Night River, they are all out in the world now. The drum beats have officially ended. And I want to thank you guys very much for joining me for this little live stream. I hope you enjoyed listening to those questions with me. And yes, join me at 3 o'clock GMT, so just in 3 hours or so, on Instagram, where I'm going to be giving you a live reading of The Night River. Very first time I'll have done it. So thank you all very, very much for joining me. Have an absolutely wonderful day. Stay safe out there. Don't go singing to any spirit if you don't know what you're doing. And thank you so, so much for all of your support, for joining me, for supporting me, for buying my work, for watching my videos. It means so much. You honestly have no idea how much it means to me. Just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And with that being said, I'm getting kisses. Let me tilt this down. Am I getting kisses? Little attention hogger. Okay, Bassies. Oh, there she goes. I will see you later. Thank you very much for joining me, and have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.